Okay guys, so today I have something pretty interesting. This is the biggest sleeper deck of the upcoming formats, Psychic, coming out in Duelist Advanced with extremely powerful support cards. This is the very beginning of July, so right around the corner. In this video, I want to talk about the game plan of Psychic as I understand it so far and why Punk is probably the best thing you can mix with it. If you're new to my channel, I tend not to focus on combo videos or spreadsheets, and I try to focus more on what the game plan is and what is the deck theory behind how you build a deck. So this is my best take on how to take as many bricks as possible out of the deck and have a very compact and streamlined deck that focuses around just the best cards possible. So let's start with a brief overview of the newest cards. Then I will show you some basic lines that show you how to execute the game plan. And because this deck is a little bit unusual with how the combos work, I do think you have to be walked through the combo once or twice to understand why it is you sequence in a certain way. Okay, so firstly, before getting to new cards, Emergency Teleport is the heart and soul of this deck. Even in modern meta decks, there are very few cards that stand out as extraordinary on their own. Habakiri is probably the single best card in any meta deck right now because it does everything. This card is the Habakiri for Psychic. So special summon one level 3 or lower Psychic monster from your hand or deck, but banish it during the end phase of this turn. This is not once per turn, and the deck actually can play this as many times as you want per turn as long as you can keep searching it. So, Emergency Teleport is the heart and soul of the deck. Let's start with Mind Procedure. This card says, if this card is normal summoned or special summoned by a monster effect, you can pay 2,000 life points, add one teleport, normal, or quick play spell from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So this card searches Emergency Teleport, which is not once per turn. Unfortunately, this card has to be normaled or special summoned by monster effect in order to search. So you cannot E-Tele into Mind Procedure and search another E-Tele. Also, this can be treated as a non-tuner, which does come up. And if this card is banished, you can pay 1,000 life points, special summon it. But you can only use one effect per turn, which is unfortunate because otherwise you could probably float into more synchro monsters. But anyhow, this card is a very strong card. So you can either normal summon it, so it's a starter, or you can special summon it off of your other monster, which is Serene Psychic Girl. This is also a high quality starter for the deck. So if this card is normal or special summoned by any means, including off of E-Tele, you can banish one card from your hand. And if you do, special summon one level 4 or lower Psychic monster from your deck except itself. So you can special summon Mind Procedure, of course, and then that can give you the E-Tele. You can also summon the Xiamen off of this card because it is a level 4 or lower Psychic monster. Then this card can target face-up monsters on the field that have a level up to the number of Psychic monsters you control, increase their levels by 1 until the end of this turn. This actually does matter because modulating the levels of your monsters allows you to choose which monsters from your extra deck you're going to go into. Then we have Prototype Psychic Blaster. This is not a starter, but it is such a high quality, high efficiency extender that I think you probably have to play 3 of it. So you can discard this card as cost, special summon a level 4 or lower Psychic monster from your hand or banishment. Level 4 or lower Psychic monsters are like your entire deck. Or if it's not what is in your hand, it's usually something that can get you one of those cards. Then, if this card is in your graveyard, you can pay 1,000 life points and banish one other Psychic monster from your graveyard, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. Even if I don't need to use this because I'm not clogged on normals, I will often still prefer to use this to bring that card out, just because I want to be able to use this grave effect later. Then we have Hush Psychic Minister. So this is another extender where if you control a Psychic other than itself, you can special summon it. You can only do that once per turn. But this has another effect, which is pretty useful. So you can banish this card and one other Psychic monster from your graveyard, target a face-up monster on the field, banish it until the end phase. So you can either use this to help push through boards, or you can use this in your basic combo that I'll show you in a moment, where you can banish one of your own boss monsters until the end phase, and then you can trigger a Lambda, which will be part of your basic end board and part of the basic game plan, I think, probably. Okay, so then there are the Punk cards in here that I'm not going to go over, and there are only a few new boss monsters in the extra deck, but they're good enough that you definitely play the deck very differently because of them. So Silent Psychic Magician is a tuner, but it can also be treated as a non-tuner, and if it's special summoned, you can target a level 4 or lower Psychic monster in your graveyard or banishment, special summon it. So it's basically part of your combo. And the thing that you bring out, you can increase the level by 1, which again actually does matter because you want to have some options for which boss monster to bring out from your extra deck. Then we have the star boss monster, Psychic Blaster Mark II. So this can target a banished monster, special summon it to your field. That is useful for your combo, so you'll do this all the time. And then it also has a quick effect during the main phase where you can banish a monster from your grave, and then target one other face-up monster on the field, banish it, and gain life points equal to that banished monster's original attack. So this guy is as perfect of a boss monster you could possibly have wanted for this deck because it regains life points, which is very important. It has an out of turn effect, so it's like an actual boss monster, but it also helps you recover resources because it can special summon from banished. And because it banishes from your grave, it's kind of like a self-sustaining. You can banish something for, to banish something from your grave to banish one of their guys out of turn, and then on your turn, you'll have that banished guy you can bring back. There is another card called Crossmind Archfiend. I haven't figured out if this is actually useful or not. He can bring back a level 7 or lower psychic monster from grave during the main phase, and then during the battle phase he can tribute another guy to gain life points, and then he gains the attack. And this is a level 8, so maybe there are cases where you could use this instead of Psychic Blaster, but I don't really know if this card is worth playing yet. The last guy is Absolute Axon Kicker. This is an absurd card, so it has to be fusion summoned, but you'll do that. And if it is fusion summoned, you can pay 2,000 life points, banish all face-up cards your opponent controls. All, so not just monsters, not just spells or traps, you banish all. Then if this card is in the graveyard, except the turn it was sent there, you can banish it, special summon a level 10 Psychic Fusion monster from your extra deck, and that is treated as a fusion summon. So the target is this guy, which is the old version, so he also can't be destroyed by card effects. And he does piercing damage, and if he destroys an opponent's monster in battle and sends it to the graveyard, you also gain life points equal to the destroyed monster's attack. So this card is summoned off of Teleport Fusion, which is another of the new cards. So this card says, during the main phase, you can fusion summon a Psychic Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing psychic monsters from your field or graveyard. So because you can banish from grave, it's basically free. If a face-up psychic monsters you control that was special summoned from the extra deck is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard, target one of your banished psychic monsters, special summon it. So this is a very strong card. I'm not currently playing it in this build because I think that I prefer a deck that has as little bricks as possible, especially if I'm also playing Cyframe Driver. But this is kind of like Woes for White Forest, or Great Purification for Mitsurugi, or MTP07 for Malice, in the sense that you get a different type of layer that your deck doesn't already have, and you don't just want to lose to something that beats your monster zone. You would rather have something in your spell and trap zone that's still a strong interaction. So I think there's a very strong argument for playing this card. I'm just not sure if it's correct to play it yet or not. The last thing that I wanted to show is that there is another card that is absurd that you can play that I'm not playing, which is Parallel Teleport. Unlike the other new support like Serene Psychic Girl and the other guys that say, if you resolve this effect, you can only summon psychics from your extra deck for the rest of the turn. That's like the typical restriction, but this one, you can't special summon the entire turn you activate this card, including before you have activated this card, besides psychic monsters. So I feel like this restriction, you can play this in pure. You can play this in a Kashtira version because you can special summon Kashtira monsters from your deck because they're psychics. So like this card is very good, and I'm not saying that it's incorrect to play it, but in my current version, I prefer the flexibility of not being locked under this. And also, I feel like the E-Tele is strong enough that you don't actually need this most of the time. But this can tribute a psychic monster with a level, special summon a level 7 or lower psychic monster from your deck or extra deck, and then you will take life point damage based on the level difference between what you tributed and what you brought out by 1,000. Also, you actually can kill yourself so easily with this deck, so I also didn't want to have to think about that. But you can play that card too. And then there's some other like tech options, like you can make a Shen Shen, which can be good against certain decks. Jura is a staple boss monster of the deck. Psychic End Punisher is the classic win condition for these types of burn decks, so you have to play that as well. And then if you are playing Punk, you have to play Amazing Dragon, Jam Dragon Drive, and Jam Fever. You do have to play Almirage too, as I'll show you in a second. Okay, so let me go on to some basic combos. I'll start with this combo is basically to show you what the game plan is supposed to be. So the end board that this deck makes with this combo is what you're trying to achieve with almost every single hand, aside from when you're trying to break boards where you go into a Psychic End Punisher, etc. So let's say we start with E-Tele and all blanks. So normally you do this in the draw phase to play around roll, but you will E-Tele, bring out your Serene Psychic Girl, so when she's brought out, normal or specialed, she can special summon a level 4 or lower psychic monster by banishing a blank from hand. So we bring out the Mind Procedure, and when the Mind Procedure is summoned specialed off of a monster effect or normaled, then he can search for a teleport. So you could have searched for Parallel Teleport or Teleport Fusion, but I'm showing you that you don't actually need those cards, and so this is just the core game plan. So we're going to search for an E-Tele here. You can add it back from grave, or you can add it from deck. I choose to add back from grave because I want to leave the E-Teles in deck as good draws. So Now I E-Tele for a Xiamen, and now you can see that the Psychic cards bridge into the Punk cards, and the Punk cards can also bridge into the Psychic cards, which I'll show you in a second. So now we've summoned 3 times. We're going to Xiamen and search for Rising Scale, and we're now going to use the Psychic Girl's level modulation effect to turn Mind Procedure and Xiamen into 4s, so that now we can make Jam Dragon Drive. So this guy can search a level 3 Psychic monster from the deck and either add it to hand or send it to the graveyard. So obviously, this one can search for the Mind Procedure, which is why the Punk cards bridge into the Psychic, and the Psychic cards I've just shown you with E-Tele bridge into Punk. So that's perfect. Whenever you mix 2 engines together, you don't want it to just be one way, like any 2 bodies into Closed Heaven Fiendsmith, but not the other way around. You want them to both bridge into each other, and then also not be redundant because they work even if you draw both of them. So this is really like an extremely strong combination. So anyhow, the Jam Dragon Drive is going to search for our Psychic Minister, which is both a free summon and is also has a trick later that I'll show you in a moment. So on summon 5, is this summon 5? Yeah, so it was a 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is going to be summon 5. We're going to make Jam Fever. So there's no downside to playing around Nib in this combo, so you might as well. And this guy can either detach 1 to draw, or you can detach 1 to negate a monster effect. So I'm not going to draw because usually you would rather not get a blank draw instead of keeping the monster negate, especially when you're going to do the rest of your combo. I guess at the end of your combo, you could use it, but I think it's still kind of risky. So generally, I would not draw off of this. I would leave it for the monster negate. So now we can summon the Hush Psychic Minister because we control another Psychic. And now we have a 3 and a 2, where one's a tuner, one's a non-tuner. So we can go into the Silent Psychic Magician, which is like our Monster Reborn guy from Grave or Banished. So we bring back the Mind Procedure and bump the level by 1, because instead of going into an 8 with a 5 and a 3, we want to go into a 9 with a 5 and a 4. So this 9 is going to be the Psychic Blaster Mark II, which is the crazy new boss monster that does everything, including your taxes. So this guy can special any monster from Banished. Doesn't even have to be a Psychic. We don't have anything in Banished, but we have searched for our Rising Scale before. And we also have many, many ways of banishing stuff in our grave, so it doesn't matter. We're going to Rising Scale, banish our Xiamen to bring out a Dare Note. So in this version, I'm playing the smallest Punk engine with the least bricks possible. So there's no Wagon, there's no Sharakusai, no Field Spell, none of that. So we go into the Dare Note, and now I'm going to summon a Lambda so that the Dare Note will float the Rising Scale. And because I have a banished monster, I can special summon the banished monster with the Psychic Blaster. So now I have an 8 and a 3, which can go into an 11, which we can make our Jura here. And then for the last trick, we can use the Hush Psychic Minister to banish itself and another Psychic from grave to banish our own boss monster just until the end phase. Because if a face-up Psychic monster you control is banished face-up while you control this guy, then you can add during the end phase a Psyframe card from your deck to your hand. And obviously, you can activate the Psyframe cards from your hand even while you control a monster, as long as this is on the field. So then when we go end phase, we're going to add a Gamma or Delta, or if people were playing evenly, you could add the guy that negates the traps. The Jura comes back, and then when you pass turn, this is basically what you've been trying to set up this whole time. So you have a quick effect banish that will also give you back life points. That matters because this combo is paying like very little life points compared to other combos, and we're already at half. We're going to hopefully gain some stuff off of Jura and not have to use that immediately. We're going to have the monster negate. We're going to have the Gamma, Delta, whatever. And then we're hopefully, if this stays alive, we're going to have follow-up because this can revive back from banish, etc. So this is basically what you're trying to achieve with every hand. Now I can show you like some reasons why you would play the Teleport Fusion. So let's say we're going to start with the E-Tele into the Serene Psychic Girl, but we've already drawn the Xiamen. So the Serene Psychic Girl will bring out the Mind Procedure, and he's going to search the Teleport Fusion instead of the E-Tele, because the E-Tele that gave us the Xiamen we've drawn. So now we're going to normal summon the Xiamen, and this combo will start in the same way, where we go for a Rising Scale. And then we're going to level modulate so that we can go into Jam Dragon Drive, search for the Psychic Minister, because usually whenever you see like a 2 and a 3, that means you can go into the 5, which floats your other body to go into the 9, which is your Psychic Blaster. So you always need to just remember like this particular level combination, a 3 and a 2, into the 5 that then gets you into the Psychic Blaster. Anyhow, now we go into the Jam Fever so that we're safe. Then we go into the Silent Psychic Magician, bring back out, go into Psychic Blaster. Now we can Rising Scale banish the Xiamen like we were doing before, bring out the Dare Note, go into Lambda. The Dare Note floats the Rising Scale. The Psychic Blaster brings back the Xiamen. We go into the Drua. We Psychic Minister Trick to banish the Drua till the end phase so that our Lambda will trigger. And we can search the Gamma or the Delta or whatever in the end phase. I'm also showing here that you can actually use the Jam Fever to detach the material to draw 1, but I think you probably do not do this most of the time, and you keep the Monster Negate because the 1 draw is not worth it. It's not worth losing the Monster Negate. So now when you pass turn, you're going to have basically the same board as before. So you have the Drua, the Psychic Blaster, the Lambda with your search Gamma or Delta, and then the draw or the Negate, but preferably the Negate. Except you also have Teleport Fusion now, and you have 2 Synchros in Graveyard. So now the opponent does whatever. You're going to Teleport Fusion, banish your 2 Synchros, summon the Absolute Axon Kicker. He's going to pay 2,000 to banish all face-up cards the opponent controls. So this is what you can do instead if you're playing the Teleport Fusion. And then also lastly, just to show you that if you're really worried about recovering life points, and there's nothing for you to banish that's good, or they're like dodging it or whatever with Psychic Blaster, you can banish your own guy to regain the life points. And if you banish the Mind Procedure, because he's banished, he can special summon himself the turn that he hasn't already used his other effect. And then you would also be able to trigger your Lambda if you banished one of your Psychic monsters face up while this was on the field. So there are lots of like resource tricks that you can do in this deck. Yeah, okay. Now let me show you why the prototype is so important. So this card, this super good extender. So let's say that you've drawn double normals. So he's obviously useful for unclogging normals. But let's say that you start with your Serene Psychic Witch and you've decided you want to start with this instead of Xiamen. So this is, first in the firing line for hand traps. And the opponent goes Imperm or Valor or whatever. So your Serene Psychic Girl fizzles. Now you can prototype, discard itself to bring out your Xiamen. Then you can Xiamen and summon the Rising Scale. Now, very important note here, because I'm making Lambda, to put a Punk Engrave so that I can banish a Punk Engrave to special Rising Scale. Normally, you would prefer to turn the Xiamen into an Almirage so that you're keeping the other body, in this case the Serene Psychic Girl, so that she can be another body for Lambda later, and it's a little bit more efficient. But the Almirage can only be used with normal summoned monsters, but because we special summoned the Xiamen off the prototype, or if you had done it off of E-Tele, you cannot make the Almirage in that case. But I still think you do have to play Almirage because there are many cases where you normal summon the Xiamen and you want to turn it into Almirage. Anyhow, just letting you know that that's why I'm making Lambda directly instead of the Almirage first. So now Rising Scale can banish the Xiamen to bring itself out. And in this combo, I'm going to show you like the big ceiling, big package stuff. So I'm going to bring out the Wagon. So we're playing more bricks and also the field spell. The Wagon can pay 6 to add the field spell. And how many draws you get off of this, like it's 2 per turn, but also you can do it in your opponent's turn, will depend on the sequencing of your lines. So you may only get 1 draw sometimes. You may get both draws both times. You may get 2 draws in either player's turn. You may get 1 draw in either player's turn. It just depends on the cards you've drawn. So now I can bring out Prototype by banishing another Psychic. And this is important because this is a 6. So without level modulation, a 6 and a 3 can go into a 9. And now you have your Psychic Blaster. And then the Prototype leaving the field to banishment off his own effect will trigger the Lambda without you using the Hushed Minister tricks. And now the Blaster can bring back the Xiamen. And what you do here will depend on what else you've drawn. So for example, if I go for an 8 and a 3 here, you could make Jura and pass. And so you would have the Lambda and you would have searched for a Gamma or Delta or whatever. So you would have that Gamma or Delta. You would have the banish off the Psychic Blaster. And then you'd have a Jura. But you can also make Amazing Dragon, bring back a body. And then because you have a Punk Synchro, you can overlay into Jam Fever. So you have a Monster Negate this way. And having the extra body would matter if you have some other way to special something else from hand. So it could have been like a Hush Psychic Minister. It could have been, I don't know, if you were playing Psychic Wielder or Tracker or whatever those things are. Like if you had another body, then you would want this to be your Monster Negate and then another body. So yeah. Then let me show you some other stuff here. So Ogre is pretty useful in this deck, and I'm currently testing it at 3. So let's say that you draw a weird combination of cards like Prototype, which can summon a level 4 or lower Psychic monster from your hand or banishment, and Ogre. So if you Ogre here, and you search for the Xiamen, you can you can normal summon the Xiamen and search for a Rising Scale. And because you normal summon the Xiamen, you could turn it into an Almirage and bring out Rising Scale. But since you went for the Ogre first, you already have a body in Grave. So you don't need to give up the Xiamen body on field. Because this going into an Almirage is just a body that is useful for Lambda and nothing else. Whereas if this stays on field, because you can banish the Ogredance that is no longer useful, then you can go into potentially something else later on. So you Rising Scale, you bring out the Dare Note. I think this version is probably with... I don't think I'm playing any bricks in this version. Let's see. So we bring out the Dare Note. Well, aside from Dare Note. I mean, like, you're not playing Wagon in the field spell, whatever. And here we can go into the Jam Dragon Drive because we're using a 5 and a 3. And this one, remember, this can bridge the engines together, right? So the Jam Dragon Drive searches for the level 3 Psychic. We're not searching Ghost Ogre. We're searching Mind Procedure. So because we have the prototype in hand, this allows us to do it this way, even though we've already used our normal summon. If we had used the prototype earlier to bring out the Xiamen so that we had never used the normal summon, you could still search this and normal summon the Mind Procedure later. So anyhow, now remember that the rule of thumb is that you do not want to have used both engines before the Jam Fever protection from Nib or whatever. There's just no reason because there's no upside to holding your protection until later on. It's not like we have to go for a worse route to get the protection. It's fine. The other thing that I want to say is that just because Jam Fever can overlay on a single body if you use a Punk Fusion or Synchro does not mean you should do that. There are cases where these bodies don't actually give you more stuff, and so you could easily overlay both, and that way you can get the draw off of Jam Fever by detaching, and you'll still have another material to be able to monster negate later. So that's what I'm doing here. Now, I will get the draw off of Jam Fever because I still have another material, and I'll put the Jam Dragon Drive in the graveyard, which matters if we want to float this later, like by banishing it and bring it back off Psychic Blaster, or if we were playing Teleport Fusion and we needed another Synchro and graveyard to banish. So anyhow, now we will prototype the discard itself to bring out Mind Procedure. Because he was special summon off a monster effect, he can search E-Tele. So again, in this build, I'm showing you in the combat build, you don't actually need Parallel Teleport or Teleport Fusion to play properly. So we're going to search for an emergency teleport and bring out the Serene Psychic Girl, which we didn't even use yet. And that can bring out our Hush Psychic Minister because we already have access to the rest of them. Remember, this can be treated as a non-tuner, and this is not a tuner. So now we can make a Lambda if we want. And here we can make our Silent Psychic Magician because this is a 5. We can bring back whatever. And then we haven't made our Psychic Blaster yet, so we make our Psychic Blaster. We have a banished Ogredance, which we actually can summon if we want because this doesn't have to only summon Psychics. We can now prototype, banish the Silent Psychic Magician to bring itself out. And then we can still use the Psychic Blaster to bring out whatever. Because whatever we want to bring out, if we don't already have it banished, like we don't want to bring out the Ogredance because it doesn't do anything useful, the cool thing about the prototype is that we can choose what we want to be banished and then bring that thing back off of the blaster. So now we have a 6 and a 5, which goes into an 11, and we can make the Drua. And because we have the Hushed Psychic Minister, we could use this to trigger the Lambda, but again, one of the things that makes Prototype good is that we don't have to go through this. So we can save this for the crackback where we're trying to push through the opponent's board and actually banish one of their guys and not one of our own. So the Prototype allows us to basically for free trigger the Lambda. And so now when we go to the end phase, we get the Gamma here. So that's another example of how you can play this. Okay, I don't really want to spend too much time going over combos that look mostly the same in the beginning, but I will just show you that you do have options for using level modulation or other tricks to go into various tech cards. And you don't necessarily have to play these extra bricks with the Wagon on the field spell or whatever to do this. I'm just showing this as an example so that I've shown you like a diversity of a couple different builds, including the Teleport Fusion stuff. So here we're going to cycle through some basic stuff to get our Psychic Blaster on field. And then this time we're actually going to make Shen Shen because we can use a 6 and a 3 to go into a 9. So just the same way that we can go into 9s with Psychic Blaster, we have multiple ways of going into 9s, and we can make the Shen Shen here. The other thing that I want to show you, aside from just remembering that the Prototype Blaster will trigger the Lambda on its own without having to use Hush Psychic Minister, which we don't even have in rotation right now. In this case, one trick you can do is if you've searched, so two things here. If you searched an emergency teleport that you didn't need to use and you don't think you want it as follow-up, this can always be a Ghost Ogre on their turn. Remember that you do banish it during the end phase of the turn you bring it out, so you would not bring the Ghost Ogre out now, you would bring it out in the opponent's turn. But the thing about the Teleport Fusion is that this is going to have to use 2 synchros to bring out your Axon Kicker. We only have 1 engrave, and obviously we want this to be free, and obviously we don't want to lose our Psychic Blaster. So what you can do is you can use something like a Floodgate, like Shen Shen early on, and then you can Teleport Fusion it later after you've maybe gotten some value or force them to go into an awkward line. And then you can just use that as a body to make your absolute Axon Kicker, and then you're no longer under your own Floodgate. So you have some control over how you use stuff like this. And then obviously the Axon Kicker will banish everything face up. That will trigger your Lambda here. You get another draw off of the field spell. And so that's the basic idea. Okay, so last thoughts here. There are a bunch of other different weird cards you can play. There was this guy, Dimensional Allotrope Varus, I found, which could be interesting because this guy is a level 3 or lower Psychic, so you can bring him off of E-Telly. And you can declare a monster type and attribute. This becomes that type and attribute. So you could bring this off of E-Telly, turn it into a Light Fiend, and make a Fiendsmith play from there. You can technically play Fiendsmith in this deck. There will be cases where you come across awkward combinations because you're now locked into Psychics from the extra deck and whatever, so I just thought that playing with Punk would be a little bit more streamlined. This guy says, once per turn you can declare 1 card name. Cards with that name and their effects cannot be used until the end of your opponent's next turn. So this could be a useful Floodgate against specific decks. Maybe you could play it as 1 in the side deck. Obviously, the Casteria Unicorn is specialable from deck off of Parallel Teleport, but I'm not playing the cash package right now. You can choose to do stuff like side Punk bricks for going first. This also makes a lot more sense if you're choosing to main Charmies. And I wanted to briefly talk about Charmies for a second here because when I showed my Punk video, I wasn't maining Charmies because the game plan of the deck is to draw like 3 times. You're drawing off of Jam Fever, you're drawing twice off the field spell, and so you want to draw into hand traps you can actually use even though you've gone first. And then you're also not punished by having those hand traps when you go second because you're just using them because you don't have bodies on the field. And so if you are playing Charmies, you obviously need good stuff to take out for when you're going first. So this deck, because you don't have to play the Punk field spell and focus around the draws and stuff, you don't actually have to follow the same game plan. And so I think this deck is a lot better with Charmies than the Punk Fiendsmith list that I showed before is. And so then you could easily put in stuff like these guys, and maybe even also the field spell and Wagon. If you're playing like 6 Charmies, you would also need 6 stuff going first. I don't know if this card is probably not worth playing, but it does gain 1200 life, so it could be a time card. Then there are a bunch of cards that say Psychic in the name, but I don't think there's actually a way to search them. But like if you control a Psychic type monster, you can target a card on the field, destroy it. Like that could be useful if spot removal is good against particular things. Sight Impulse tributes a Psychic type monster, returns all cards in your opponent's hand to the deck, and then they draw 3 cards. So I don't know. I think a lot of these cards are mostly gimmicks. But you can look into them if you think there might be something. Psychic Eraser Laser is actually crazy. Send a monster your opponent controls that was special summoned from the extra deck to the graveyard, and then your opponent gains life points equal to the original attack or defense of the monster. So this is like the Herald of the Abyss, I think it was called, except you get to choose what you're sending as long as it came from the extra deck. But I don't think this is actually searchable despite it saying Psychic in the name. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I don't think the Therion is this is a Psychic. It would put another 8 on board. It would be an extender, but I think that Psychic Blaster is a better extender. Hush Minister is probably a better extender, and then Wielder and Tracker also probably better. This guy may have some potential, so he's also a Psychic, level 4. You can banish one other card from your hand, special summon this card from your hand. Then you can banish a level 4 or lower monster you control, special summon a monster from your deck with the same original type and attribute the banished monster had on the field, but 1 or 2 levels lower. So this guy can't really banish himself because he's a water, but if you had another guy on field, you could banish that other guy and then bring something else out. Maybe there's some gimmick with this. This guy, when he's normal summoned, you can banish a Psychic monster from your deck. And if you do, this card's level becomes that level. Now, because this guy can only use one of his effects per turn, you can't banish him from deck, bring him back, and then be able to search off of it. So that's unfortunate, but I don't know. I guess you could. No, I don't know if this is worth playing. And then there's this guy, which is very weird. So I was thinking that sometimes maybe you want a rank 3 because you have 2 3s on field. and there's nothing really good to make. So at the start of the battle phase, you can attach one material from this card. During this battle phase, a player can only attack with one monster, and its attacks become a direct attack. You can only use this once per turn. At the end of the damage step, if a monster inflicted battle damage by a direct attack, you give control of the monster that attacked to the player's opponent. So if you attack with something and you don't kill them, you have to give them your monster. But I thought that this could be useful because there are games where you make Psychic and Punisher and you can't actually kill shots because they have monsters on field. And so maybe you could make Spaceway Octo Bypass and allow your Psychic and Punisher to attack directly when it has over 8k, and then you would win that way. So, you know, maybe you could consider playing that guy. Was there anything else that I was thinking about? Let's see if there's anything I had in some of the older builds. I'm not sure. I think right now my idea is that you play a heavy punk package, and the Foxy Tune is good at 3 because it helps unclog your normals. Like you have better ways of being able to special stuff from deck. Discarding doesn't hurt as much when banishing stuff from grave can be good. Ogredance, I'm testing at 3 because it's better to have Ogredance in grave and banish it from your Rising Scale instead of losing your Xiamen. And because I'm playing the combo where you are searching off of Lambda, I don't want to just play Gamma and Driver. That's insane. So I'm maxing out on all the ones that are good because there's almost no game where you don't get some value off of negating a spell card. So that's why I have the 3 deltas and the 1 gamma for better ratios here. If you're not playing the Teleport Fusion, or if you were siding it, then you don't have to play these 2 cards. And maybe you would play like a second Blaster and a second Silent Magician so you have better follow-up. I'm not sure. There are also like gimmicks you can do with Omega where you can like loop them for 2, but I feel like that's a crutch for players who are just hoping to hit good stuff and not actually have to think about their interactions. So I feel like this card is maybe better thinking of it as like a resource card where you want to like return a banished card to the grave or something, but I don't actually know if doing the Omega loop is good in this deck. And that's basically it for this review of Psychic. So if you have any suggestions, let me know. If you want to join the Discord, link is in the description. Feel free to @ me in any of the channels, and I will respond. And thanks for watching.